Good morning, everyone. At the outset, let me thank you all for being here on a Sunday morning to listen to this topic. That shows your interest in this topic and your confidence in us. And we hope that we will be able to live up to your expectations. I also thank the management of St. Thomas Hospital for arranging the infrastructure for this program and organizing this program. Let me start with a very simple and practical definition of stress. Stress is the response of our mind and body to a real or imagined threat. I don't have to explain to a group of healthcare professionals that stress involves not only our mind, it is not merely a psychological phenomenon, it has a lot of physiological components also, your adrenaline, your cortisol, etc. etc. I will not go into those details. At the same time, I would like to highlight the second point. Stress is the response to a stressor, a threat. It can be either real or imagined. So that means there need not be something that need to really frighten you, especially even in a time like COVID. Somebody can feel stressed because of some imagined threats, for example in response to fake news or things like that. So that part also we have to keep in mind.
What are the common reasons for stress in healthcare workers during the COVID pandemic? I will list the major important ones. Obviously, there is an increase in the workload, especially for those centers that are catering to patients suffering from COVID-19. And also that has led to an increase in the work hours, leading to a lot of stress. Unavailability of appropriate personal protective equipment, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, many of us were facing the deficiency of N95 masks, even face shields, even. Now that has been solved to some extent, but still in many centers, especially the COVID-19 centers, many professionals are finding it difficult to get enough number of PPE kits and all. So that is leading to stress. Managing the distress of patients. If you are dealing with the patients suffering from COVID-19, they have a lot of uncertainties, they have a lot of anxieties. Media has built a very horrific image of COVID-19 in the patient's mind. So you have to deal with that. That may be stressful to you also. Even for others, like I am a psychiatrist, so even to us, the patients come and ask about when will be the vaccine available, when will be a medicine available, when will the school start, when is this going to end? Because of my visit to this hospital, am I going to get an infection? All these kind of doubts they keep asking. So when this keeps on happening throughout the day repeatedly, that can be stressful to the healthcare professionals. You may have a fear that you may contract COVID-19 from the hospital, from anyone you encounter. And also, especially, you may feel that you may be afraid that I may pass it on to my family, especially my elderly parents and all my friends, my colleagues. These kinds of concerns can lead to anxiety and stress. We are not only professionals, all of us have a family, many of us are parents. So childcare becomes a huge issue in these times, especially with the schools remaining closed and you are in your workplace for a more period of time. So that is a huge burden, stress reported by a lot of working parents. Many are afraid that if I come across if I become a primary contact or secondary contact, will I have to enter quarantine? How will I spend the time there? Will I get an income during the time? How will I pay the bills for the time? How will I pass the time 2 weeks or more alone in solitude? All these kind of concerns and worries are there. And there is a lot of stigma and discrimination. All of you have read the news about doctors being denied a cremation because they died of COVID-19. In many places, doctors are not being allowed for flats and houses and all. Recently, we had an incident in Kerala where a doctor suffered from MI, but now neighbor tried to help him because they were afraid that he is having COVID. So this kind of stigma and discrimination add to the stress experienced by healthcare workers. So all of these are causing stress, but how to recognize whether you are suffering from stress or not? What are the common symptoms of stress? Stress can have very different kind of symptoms. There can be many psychological symptoms, mainly cognitive and emotional symptoms. Like you may not be able to focus, you may not be able to concentrate on your job properly. You may get easily angry. You are maybe become very irritable. Many people may feel it very restless. You may find difficult to sit still at one place. For many people, there could be initial insomnia. Even if you are in bed, you may not be able to fall asleep easily. You may start feeling sad for very minor reasons. You may start feeling guilty for very small reasons. You may start worrying for even very minor provocations. You may start getting tearful, crying for very mild reasons. Even a very small activity can cause fatigue. It can make you tired. There can be changes in your appetite. Mostly it is a loss of appetite. You don't feel like eating anything. Or some people start facing the stress with emotional eating. That is, whenever you feel sad or upset or angry, you try to control that. You try to manage that with food, especially junk food and all. So that also leads to some problems. So all these kind of psychological, cognitive, emotional symptoms can be there for stress. There can be a lot of physical symptoms also. You can have a pain in your head, neck, shoulder, back. You can have an upset stomach. There can be heaviness in your chest. Your muscles can feel very tight. There can be a lump in your throat, that globus hystericus that we usually refer to. You can, well, as we already told, you may lose your appetite. So there can be a lot of physical symptoms also. But even if you're feeling these symptoms, as usually if they are to a mild extent, there is nothing to worry about. Because at a time like this, when the world is facing the COVID-19 pandemic, it is an okay response. It is a normal, natural response to feel a bit worried or afraid. So there is nothing to be ashamed or feel guilty or worried about these things. Not only that, mild amount of stress is not only normal, that is even useful if you look at this graph. Like suppose you have absolutely no stress. There is no stressors at all. Nobody is bothered whether you go to work or not. Nobody is bothered whether your patients improve or not. Nobody is bothered whether you get your salary or not. Then you will not have sufficient motivation to perform adequately. So some amount of stress is actually needed for somebody to be able to work properly. Also, physiologically, when you have some amount of stress, there will be a lot of secretion of adrenaline, which helps the heart rate to improve, the pumping of the heart to improve, the blood flow improves to your legs, to your brain, your body. So all these are actually beneficial. But when the stress crosses certain limit, when it enters what is called the bad stress, that can have a lot of adverse consequences, both psychologically and physically. So this is the higher amount of the more severe amounts of stress that you have to be worried about, that you have to. Now, there are three major ways of coping with stress. When you are facing stress, there are three recognized ways of coping. Some are healthy, some are unhealthy. One is avoidant coping. Then we have problem-focused coping. Then we have emotion-focused coping. So, three kinds of coping are there. So, this one, avoidant is an unhealthy way of meeting stress, while problem focused and emotion focused are healthy ways. So first let us see what is avoidant coping. But basically, as the name indicates, you are avoiding the stress. You are absolutely not making any attempt to face that. You are ignoring that. You are totally passively like remaining there without considering anything. This is an old peanut strip. What the characters are saying, if I would read the slide, what he is saying is, I don't like to face problems head on. I think the best way to solve problems is to avoid them. This is a distinct philosophy of mine. No problem is so big or so complicated that it can't be run away from. So again, that's a very attractive attitude if you look at it, but that is not something that is going to carry you to a situation like the COVID-19 pandemic. So there you need more healthy kinds of coping. So there we have problem-focused coping and solution-focused, sorry, emotion-focused coping. So these two kinds of coping are there. We will discuss what these two mean. These are the kind of coping that you have to do, that we will be discussing in this particular presentation. So first, what you have to do is, like before deciding how to respond, is there a problem? Is there a stressor causing you? A stressor is any factor that is causing you stress. We discussed a number of stressors that can happen in this pandemic period to healthcare professionals. So first you have to think, is there a stressor? If the answer is yes, then you have to start planning. The first thing you have to consider is, can I change it? Whatever factor that is causing you a stressor, is it something I can control myself? Is it something beyond my control? We will see the examples. Suppose the answer is yes. Yes, it is something that you have a control over. That's something you can change. Then the next question is is now the good time to work on it? Am I capable of? Is it possible to work on this particular problem now? If the answer is yes, then you have to tackle it. That is called problem focused coping. Basically, in problem focused coping, what you do is you address the problem at its root, at its cause. You try to prevent the problem from recurring. You try to remove yourself from the problem. You try to limit the severity of the problem. That is what happens. I will give you a very simple example. You have a group of unexpected guests at your home, and you recognize that you want to serve them tea, but you recognize that you don't have milk at your house. If you go through the pathway given, is it something that you can solve? Yes, obviously you can get milk. Can you get it now? Yes, you can get milk. Then you tackle the problem. You go and get some bottles of milk. That is a problem focused coping. It may not be possible always. There will be some situations where you cannot change the stressor. The stressor is something that is not under your control. In those situations, you have to do the emotion focused coping. So here what we do is, we cannot do much about what is causing you the problem, what is causing you the stress, but you can modify, adjust your own response to that particular problem, and that way you can escape yourself from feeling negative, unhealthy emotions like sadness, worries, and all the symptoms of stress that we listed. Also, like in the earlier one, like it is a stressor that you can change, something you can modify. However, you are not in a position to tackle that now. Now it is not possible for you. In that situation also, like you have to resort to emotion focused coping, because problem focused coping will not be an option then, because that time is not optimal. For example, somebody very close to you died. Now you cannot reverse that. You cannot replace that person. So you cannot tackle that problem as such. It has happened. Now, but it does not mean that you have to keep experiencing the problems of stress and depression and anxiety throughout your life. So there you have to use emotion focused coping, where like you can feel sad to some extent, you can lose your sleep and appetite to some extent, but it should not start affecting your health. If that happens, you have to know how to control those adverse consequences. So that is what happens in emotion focused coping. In most of this presentation, we will be mainly focusing on emotion focused coping, and to some extent, very briefly, we will also cover problem focused coping. So I told you already that whether to use problem focused coping or emotion focused coping, first thing you have to decide is something is in your control or outside your control. So this is called a circle of control. So you have to divide the stressors that you have, whether they are outside of your control or whether within your control. For example, related to COVID-19 situation, there will be lots of factors which are not in your control. Somebody losing their job, some distant relative losing a job, or in the TV you see so many people saying that they have lost their jobs. That is not something you personally can do something about. Whether someone with COVID-19 will die, like some VIPs are in the ventilator, you hear. In some hospital, you see that so many patients are on ventilator, they are seriously ill, but you personally cannot do anything to modify that. How the government responds to COVID-19, whether the lockdown is to be lifted, whether the schools have to be reopened, whether the exams have to be conducted. These are all government policies. You may not have a role in that. Whatever they decide, you will be in a, like have to pass video. You don't have it's not in your control. How others act, the public, the patients, etc., etc., whether they are wearing the masks properly, whether they are following social distancing, whether they are taking sufficient precautions. So all this you don't have any control. So in areas like this, what you will have to do? You cannot do any problem focused coping. Only thing you will have to do is your emotion focused coping. Now there will be some areas which you can control, where you can use the problem focused coping itself. For example, how you respond to others, to your patients, how you, whether in your interactions, whether you are keeping the social distancing, etc., etc. Whether I take protective measures to prevent infection, whether you are using mask, whether you are using sanitizer, whether you are using face shield, etc., etc. What information I give to others, like in WhatsApp, whether you are forwarding all fake messages without checking whether they are real or not, what information you are giving to your patients, all these things are under your control. So here you have no excuse. Here you have to do the problem solving approach, as we will be discussing later, and you have to tackle it appropriately. You have to prevent stress from appearing to you and others. Now, this is an important slide. This is a very important relationship in psychiatry and psychology. If you can read in your screen, please read that. Basically, what that says is your thoughts, behaviors, and emotions are very interlinked. I told you about emotion focused topic in which we mainly try to tackle, try to reduce negative emotions. So what this slide says is like it will not be very easy to always to tackle the emotions directly. You are feeling sad, you are feeling anxious. It may not be always possible to tackle it directly, but our emotions are very much interlinked to our thoughts and behaviors. Our thoughts influence our emotions and behaviors. Our behaviors influence our emotions and thoughts, and our emotions are influenced by our thoughts and behaviors. Let me give you an example. Something bad happened in your workplace. Some patient suffered some complication that you did not expect. And so you started thinking, I am not a very good health worker. My training was not sufficient. I think I made a mistake. I should have paid more attention. Now my CV will be affected. I may be dismissed, etc. All these thoughts come to your mind. Because of those thoughts, you start feeling guilty, sad, anxious, irritable. All sorts of your emotions get affected because of these thoughts. You reach your house with these thoughts and emotions, then usually you watch the TV or spend time with your family or play some games or whatever. You decide, no, no, today I am not in the mood. You decide to go to your bed and wrap yourself in your blanket and ruminating about things, what happened in those periods. So because of that behavior, what happens? Again, these thoughts increase because you are not getting any distractions. Because of these thoughts, again, the negative emotions again worsen. So basically, that is a vicious cycle. That is what I told. Your thoughts and your behaviors influence your emotions. So controlling our thoughts and controlling our behaviors, we will be able to escape from many negative emotions. Now coming to how to tackle the thoughts part first. First, we will discuss the thoughts, then we will discuss the behaviors, then we will discuss the emotions one by one. In the thoughts part, mainly what you have to do is called reframing. Reframing means like as in the image that you can see many negative thoughts, especially when you are stressed, you will be perceiving everything in a negative manner. Lots of negative thoughts will automatically come to your mind. So usually what people do is without any judging, without any analyzing, they believe it blindly, and then they become sad and angry and anxious and so. So rather than doing that, whenever any thought comes to you, your mind, you have to rethink about that. You have to see whether it is true, whether it is valid, whether it has any base, or whether any more positive alternatives are possible. That is how you do the reframing. Let me show you some examples. Many people may have this concern. My family is going to get the virus and they are going to die. So many people may like blindly believe that and they may feel stressed. However, if you think about it in depth, you will understand. If you gather sufficient information, you will understand that most people who get the virus recover. So basically, this thought is baseless. So all the negative emotions that it causes, they are unnecessary. They were not needed in the first place. So that is how you reframe negative thoughts to positive thoughts. Another example. I am not working full time. I am taking time to enjoy myself when so many others are suffering. Like you have had a very hard day in your hospital. You have went to your home and you are feeling like listening to some music. Then you get a guilty thought like this: I should not be doing this. In hospital, so many patients are suffering, and I am listening to music. How is this possible? So you feel guilty. You feel anger at yourself, etc., etc. Again, this is not a very healthy thought. If you look at it, you can get its positive counterpart. Taking appropriate rest leads to proper care of patients after the break. You are not enjoying, you are not cheating people. You are ensuring that your mind and body will be ready to uh, do your duty properly the next day. So that is how you reframe something from negative to positive. There are lots of other common thoughts that people blindly believe and people feel stressed about. I will just give you the examples. I will not go through the counter example answers to all of them. It would be selfish to take time to rest. I can contribute the most by working all the time. Only I can do this particular work. My colleagues, my juniors, they will not be able to do it as perfectly as I can. I should be there. These kind of thoughts are counterproductive. All of them can lead to stress. So all of them should be replaced by reframed to more positive thoughts. Now, also, like when it is full of gloom, full of darkness throughout the day, like you are seeing so many patients, so many of them seriously ill in the news, there is nothing good. So you may feel that there is nothing positive going on in the world or in the life. That is not true. So basically, you have to remind yourself every day, at least about some good things that happened on the day. So that way, your attitude about life, attitude about the world, your mood, etc., will improve. So what you can do for that is, at the end of each day, you make a short list of 2 things: ways you were able to help others. What all ways you were able to help others? If you have a list of that, your self-esteem will improve, your mood will improve. Also, things you are grateful for. What good things people did to you. If you have a list of that, it may not automatically come. You may have to actively do that. If you do that, you will have at least a small list. So that will again like improve your perspective about the world, your attitude about the world, and also that will help you reduce your stress. For example, ways you were able to help others. I helped by attending to so many patients. So that is one thought that can elevate your mood, your confidence, your self-esteem. Things you are grateful for. I am grateful for support from my colleague. My colleague helped me a lot. So that again helps like improve. It gives you a more positive viewpoint, attitude, perspective about the world itself. Also, don't forget that in a time like this, you are performing a crucial role in fighting this pandemic and doing the best you can with available resources. This thought should be there. This should be placed on your wall if you're feeling a lot of stress. So that will again boost your morale, boost your confidence, boost your self-esteem, and lessen your stress. Now moving on to the behavior part. How to modify your behaviors in such a manner that you feel less stress. One good strategy is to advance planning of your day. It should not be very haphazard. You plan in the morning or the day before itself what exactly you are going to do on the day. Keep your schedule of activities as regular as you can, because that way things will be more in your control. And if possible, it is better whatever schedule you had before the pandemic in the early weeks of March and all, how your life was, try to have a schedule as close to that one, so that you will feel that the life has not changed that much, world has not changed for the worse that much, and all. So you keep your schedule as regular as you can, as close to the pre-COVID period as you can. That will help you like face the stressors more effectively. Every day, do an activity you enjoy or find meaningful. Engaging in art, reading something, praying, playing some games, etc. All these activities will help you. It's not like I am not supposed to do all this in this time. I am a professional. I am supposed to work always. That kind of attitude is not healthy. Also, you should not bottle up your feelings and emotions. You should share your issues with others. All of you know about the saying, like a problem shared is problem halved. So take at least 5 minutes out of your day, every day, to talk to a friend, a family member, or other trusted person about how you feel, so that you get some new perspectives from them about how to change the things. And when you are telling the things to them, you yourself give some structure to your thoughts, your experiences. You yourself will get some better answers. So sharing is always better in that regard. Also, in your workplace, also, like you talk to your manager, supervisor, colleagues, etc. If whatever issues you are facing at work, how is your well-being at work, etc., etc. So that will also help you tackle the workplace stress in this period. Now, many people think, like we told about emotion-focused coping. So the first solution that comes to their mind to tackle the emotions is to self-medicate themselves with the smoking or alcohol, etc. It's true that people may get a very short-term benefit from using these. However, there are lots of complications also. One thing is in COVID times, both these will affect your immunity adversely. So that is one thing that may increase your chances of getting COVID. Smoking, especially because COVID also affects your lungs. So it is better to keep your lungs as healthy as possible. Also, when you use this, you may feel some temporary relief. But when the withdrawal sets in, when you are stopping to use that, that will be again more stressful for you. The craving, the withdrawal symptoms, the anxiety, then the financial, the expenses needed for the buying the substances. All these may actually lead to increased stress. So these are not good stress management measures. Don't resort to them. Use the other techniques that we will be using in this presentation. Eat a balanced diet. That improves your immunity in this period and also helps you manage your stress better, because they are very healthy, very supportive to the health of the brain. At the same time, I told about emotional eating earlier. don't try to eat a lot of junk food in this period. So it is anyway, all of you know, like not very good for health. It will lead to obesity and all. But that is even harmful for your brain and your mental health, especially when there is a lot of stress going around. And when you have a lot of junk food, what they do is they reduce the amount of omega-3 fatty acid in your brain. Omega-3 fatty acid is there in the cell membranes of your brain, especially the trans fat contained in the junk food that replaces omega-3 fatty acid from the cell walls of brain cells, and that can lead to various issues in the brain. Also, like it can increase the inflammation in the brain and other body parts. So now we know that many psychiatric illnesses like depression, anxiety, etc. are associated with increased inflammation in the brain. So that inflammation will worsen if you use a lot of junk food. So it is better to avoid that. At the same time, you pay attention to have enough balanced diet. Exercise helps a lot. Daily physical exercise is very useful in this period because it helps the release of endorphins. Endorphins are very good stress busters. They tackle stress in the brain itself. And also it lowers the levels of cortisol levels. Cortisol, all of you know, is a stress hormone. The levels of cortisol go down if you do exercise regularly. So that should be a regular habit. And it may not be possible like to go to a gym or do the jogging in the roads and all because of the COVID related precautions. At the same time, you can do a lot of indoor activities. For example, these two ladies, they are dancing, and they are dancing with each other using video chatting, video consultation. So these kind of activities you can do, you know, without like feeling bored. You can remain active, you can do exercises. Now, also about information, like it is very important that we remain up to date with the accurate information about the COVID. When will be the vaccine available? What are the precautions you supposed to take? What are the effective medicines? All this you have to know. At the same time, people these days talk about an infodemic. There is so much of information, and if you keep paying attention to information, a lot of fake news and news intended to increase your stress and etc. will be there. So you have to be very vigilant about that. So one thing is limit your exposure to news, especially watching TV throughout the day. This many people died, this many people are tested positive, this many people are in quarantine, this many people lost their jobs. This throughout the day listening to this, it serves no purpose, and also it destroys your mood, it increases your stress. So it is better maybe 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, or you listen to the headlines once in 3 hours. That kind of approach will be better. Also, you should be very vigilant about fake news. In WhatsApp and it is very common, and that is leading to a lot of stress. So you should believe only those reports coming from recognized sources like the government of Kerala, WHO, CDC, etc., etc. Don't believe any. Even newspapers have given fake and wrong information these days. So rely only on the original source of information. That will be better for your mental health. Now moving on to sleep. Sleep is also very important in this period, and it is like, you know, many people know that, not many people pay sufficient attention to that. Because when there is a disruption in sleep and circadian rhythm, it can have negative consequences on your health and on your safety. For example, it can impair your immune function. If you don't sleep adequately 7 to 8 hours a day, your immune function may be impaired, so your chances of getting COVID may actually worsen. And also your work performance may be affected if you are sleep deprived, operating machinery and all, like your hand-eye coordination, everything may be affected. So get sufficient sleep. And for those who are not able to get sufficient sleep or not able to fall asleep when they want, when they go to the bed, there are some common sense tips called sleep hygiene techniques. Keep a regular sleep and wake time schedule. Like it is not like one day you go to bed at 9 o'clock, the other day you go to bed at 1 o'clock. That should not happen. As much as possible, have a regular time to go to bed and wake up. That way your biological clock will be set that way. When it is that particular time, your body will know, your brain will know that this is time to sleep, and it will facilitate sleep. Exercise close to wake time. When you get up in the morning, if it is practical, it is better to do your exercise that period, so that body knows that the time of activity, the period of energy, the daytime has started. That will signal to the body to remain awake in that period, and also like when the sufficient number of hours pass to feel sleepy also. And if you are not able to get sufficient sleep in the night because of night duties, other things and all, then at least take some brief naps in the daytime. Even naps less than 20 minutes are usual, helpful in improving the alertness, performance, and memory. So if you are like, if it is not practical to have continuous 7-8 hours sleep in the night, at least take several brief naps in the daytime. Even that is beneficial to your health. Now, for those who have difficulty falling asleep in the night, one benefit will be to have create a regular bedtime routine of quiet activities. Get your mind and body ready for sleep. In the night, suppose you are going to bed at 10 o'clock. Then from 9 o'clock itself, you have regular schedule of activities. So if you start doing that kind of rituals, then the body will get a signal that now it is time for sleep. For example, to take a warm shower, read something, brush your teeth, some relaxation exercise. So if you do start doing this series of activities regularly before sleep, then it will signal to your body that okay, this is time for falling asleep. Limit alerting activities close to bedtime. That is very important. You are arguing with someone on Facebook before going to bed. Obviously, that is going to affect your sleep. Using screens as such, phone, laptop, any kind of screen, because the brain will think, because of the blue light coming from these screens, the brain will think that it is daytime. So it will decide to not fall asleep. Lot of caffeine, exercise, heavy exercise in the evening, doing a lot of work in the evening, all this can lead to difficulty in falling asleep. Now coming to like how to tackle the emotion part, how to tackle the like we initially we told about thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. To control emotions, we have various relaxation techniques, relaxation exercises. One of the simple one is called deep breathing. It is, as the name indicates, it is very simple. You have to take some deep breaths. So basically, you count 1, 2, 3 and inhale. Then you count 1 to 6 and you exhale. You are exhaling through your pursed lips, through your mouth. So once you do that, a lot of carbon dioxide gets washed out from your body, a lot of oxygen enters your body. Your muscles, which have a bit of tightness because of your anxiety, they get relaxed a bit. A lot of good things happen because of this simple activity. At the same time, this may not help everyone. Especially for some people, they may feel discomfort when they do this. That mainly happens when they are hyperventilating rather than taking deep breath, because that may be because of the wrong technique. Still, if somebody feels a discomfort while doing this, they should immediately stop doing the deep breathing exercise. Another exercise that is very useful is diaphragmatic breathing. All of you know about diaphragm. Actually, you know that the stress happens when there is a sympathetic overactivity. Adrenaline, the sympathetic system is hyperactive, then the stress happens. All of you know that the diaphragm has a lot of innervation from the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is a part of the parasympathetic system. So if you breathe in such a way that the diaphragm is activated a lot, the diaphragm gets to move a lot, then the vagus nerve that is there in the diaphragm also gets stimulated, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. So if that gets activated, automatically the sympathetic system has to get weak. So that way you can manage your stress. So how to do breathing in such a way that diaphragm is actively involved? That is the diaphragmatic breathing technique. So it can be done in sitting position also. It is better to have a laying position like this in the diagram. 2 pillows under your head, 2 pillows under your knee if possible. Then you start inhaling. You inhale through your nose. You see that like when you are doing this, one hand is kept on your chest and the other hand is kept on your abdomen. And when you are breathing in, you should ensure that the hand kept on your chest is not moving. It should be static. And the hand kept on your abdomen should be rising up. So basically the diaphragm is moving down and the hand kept on the abdomen is rising up. The one on the chest is static. That is how you inhale. When you breathe out, that is not through the nose, that is through the pursed lips. Like that you have to breathe out. And when you are breathing out, that time also you have to take care that the hand kept on the chest is not moving and the one kept on the abdomen is falling inward. So that time the diaphragm is moving up. So that way when the diaphragm moves up and down like a piston many times, that stimulates the vagus nerve and that is a very good stress buster. Mental imagery is another very cheap and simple technique that you can use. Mental imagery. Here what you do is like you assume a comfortable position, sitting, lying, whatever. Then you relax your mind and body. You concentrate on your breathing. You focus on your breathing so that your attention to the outside world, the sights and sounds of the outside world, they are reduced. You focus on your breathing. You adjust your attitude toward receptivity. What that means is you start paying attention to your own thoughts and mind, not outside voices, outside sounds. You close your eyes and you start listening to your thoughts. You start paying attention to your thoughts. Then what you do is you select a visual theme. Any place, if you go there, you feel calm and relaxed. A beach, a garden, the courtyard of your ancestral home, whichever place where you, if you go there physically, you will feel relaxed. Such a place you start imagining in your mind. You close your eyes, you focus in your mind, then you start imagining that place. Allow your mind to make that image as vivid as possible, as clearly as possible. You imagine that particular place. And not only the vision, you use all the senses, like the sounds of that place, the smells of that place, the touch of that place, like the wind going in that place, the tastes, any food you have had there, and that taste. So all these senses you use so that that image is very enriched. So that way, it will give you a feeling that you are all actually in that particular place. So that way, obviously, you will feel relaxed. Now, moving on to another technique called unhooking. Unhooking is a technique that is described in, this is a very good book. It is available online for free from WHO. Doing what matters in times of stress, an illustrated guide. So unhooking, I will explain other techniques you can read from this book by getting it from the internet. So this is useful for those people, like when you are engaged in any normal activity, you suddenly start getting negative thoughts and like anxiety, worry, fear, and also attending negative emotions, sadness, anxiety, anger, and like for example, for this person, he has been playing with his children. Suddenly, that is why it is called hooking and unhooking. He has been hooked by thoughts and feelings, negative thoughts and negative emotions. So they hooked onto him. He started paying attention to them, so that then he was not able to enjoy the game. He was not able to participate with his children anymore. So that is how you get hooked. So in such situation, how to get unhooked from these thoughts and feelings, that is the particular technique. So there are 3 steps involved in unhooking. First thing is notice your difficult thoughts and feelings. So the first thing you have to do is what thoughts you are getting and what feelings you are getting. Feelings here mean to not emotions, the somatic feelings, the physical sensations is what is meant. So you have to first notice to them. For example, there could be various kinds of thoughts that come to you when you are getting hooked. It could be thoughts like bad things that happened in the past, not being a good enough, or being weak or crazy or bad. Bad things that might happen in the future. So it could be about bad things happening in the past, or present, or future. This kind of thoughts can come suddenly, out of sudden, when you are engaged in something else and your mood may be lost. Your ability to enjoy that situation may be lost. Feelings also, very kind of feelings can happen in your body. So what you have to do is you have to imagine in the front of your body, in the back of your body, what all sensations, what all experiences happen in those situations. It will be helpful if you remember this figure I showed in the beginning, the somatic symptoms of stress. So it may be a pain in the shoulder, it may be some difficulty in the chest, some difficulty in the knee, something like that. So you have to pay attention. Okay, this is the thought, this is the bodily sensation I have when I am hooked. So the next step is, after you notice the thought and the feeling, you have to name them in your mind. You have to, okay, this is what is happening. Silently, you don't have to tell anyone, you don't have to write it down anywhere, but in your mind, you have to have a sentence. This is what is happening. I will show you the examples. Here is tightness in my chest. Here is pressure in my forehead. Here is a painful memory. Here are fears about the future. So this is how you are verbalizing. You are giving a sentence form to this particular experience. So that way, what happens is that becomes something separate from you. It is not you. This is something is happening, and I am here. You are able to detach yourself from this particular experience, this particular thought, and this particular feeling. So, for example, this particular person with whom we started talking initially, what he can do is, here is a difficult thought. That is the thought, how he is verbalizing that particular situation. After that, the third step is refocus on what you are doing. So you recognized, okay, I have this feeling, I have this thought, you gave it a name, you formed it into a sentence. After that, okay, this particular issue is there, fine. Now I am continuing to do what I was doing, because for me in life, this is my particular value, this is what I am going to do. And you continue actively to focus on what you are doing, so you will be able to keep doing that. So the benefit is you don't get lost. You don't get lost in the thoughts and the feelings. You will be able to do like what you are actually doing. But this may take some time, like many skills, no, swimming, cycling, driving, dancing, everything you have to learn. Like that, for people who get this kind of experiences repeatedly, they may, for them also it may take some time. If they do this repeatedly, if they practice this repeatedly, they will be able to do this. For example, this particular person, finally, how he started refocusing, what he told, and even with this difficult thought, I choose to act on my values of being attentive and caring towards my children. And he continued playing. So that thought is that the feeling is there, fine, but he actively started focusing on the play. There is another example. She is having her food with her family members. Then suddenly she is hooked by anger. So she verbalized that I am noticing feelings of anger. She verbalized that, and then she decided, and even though I am having feelings of anger, I choose to act on my value of caring by refocusing and engaging with my family. So let the anger be there, but I am focusing on this. So this kind of steps, if you regularly follow, you will be able to escape forever from these hooking episodes. Again, this is the book, Doing What Matters in Times of Stress. If anybody wants to read, there are various other techniques also in that book: grounding, engaging, making room, acting on your values, being kind. You can read from that. Now, this is the time of apps. For everything, there is an app, right? So to manage your stress, also various apps are available. I will briefly talk about 3-4. My Wellbeing Index. That is from the Mayo Clinic. That is especially useful for those of you who already have some burnout, some stress. What it helps is, it will help you to record, to rate. It has a questionnaire. If you answer those questions, it will give a rating. You have this much amount of stress now. And you can also track it over time, whether it is improving, whether it is worsening. This kind of tracking is possible in this app. That is from the Mayo Clinic. Earlier, I told you about the diaphragmatic breathing. Breathe to relax. This is a good app which teaches the diaphragmatic breathing. Very good app. And this is Headspace. It has a very like many number of options. It helps you breathe, stay calm, get a better sleep. It teaches you about relaxation, meditation, mindfulness, etc. So even this app can be used. Because why I am suggesting apps is, even if those of you have stress, these are not the usual times. You cannot physically go to a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist usually, because it is safer to stay at home to avoid exposure. So especially those with mild degrees of stress and all, it is okay if you try these apps and try to manage them on your own, at least initially. Earlier, I told you about the relationship between thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So there is one whole psychotherapy based on this. That is called the cognitive behavior therapy. Cognitive behavior therapy that helps you like understand the relationship between your thoughts and behaviors, how they are influencing your emotions, how you can control your negative thoughts, etc. And like that is a very formal therapy, but there are apps which help you even do that. This particular app, Depression CBT Self Guide. So this app, if you enter, that will help you recognize your negative thoughts. What are the more positive, healthy thoughts, etc., etc. It has a depression severity test. It has many audios, articles, cognitive diary, etc., etc. Lots of useful features. Now, like earlier, I told that I will briefly talk about problem-focused coping also. Like most of the techniques we discussed, though some of them were about problem-focused coping also, but most of them were about emotion-focused coping. When you have a to do a problem-focused coping, most of you know to solve problems, but some see more complex, more serious, more severe problems, you may follow this particular strategy. First, what you have to do is define the problem. What exactly is the problem? That has to be exactly defined, because there may be issues in your initial impression about the problem. So it will help if you seek more information about the problem, like about COVID, how it spreads, what is the mortality rate, this kind of information you can seek. You can get education. And also, as we discussed earlier, like those cognitive distortions, how to reframe your negative thoughts. Use logic and reason to avoid over exaggerating the stressor. There is a stressor, right? But whether your fears are realistic or whether you are exaggerating, this kind of definition you can do. Maybe with expert help or maybe by collecting more information, etc., etc. So you have to exactly define the problem first. I have lost my job, so I have to get a job that will pay me at least this much of salary, at least within this many kilometers of my house. That is exactly defining the problem. That is how you do that. Next, you have to generate ideas for solutions. It is not like one solution came to your mind and you felt that that is the best solution and you started implementing that. No, you think, you brainstorm, you can get the help of others also. And what are the other possible solutions for that job example? I can send my CV to various hospitals. I can go apply in job sites. I can check the newspaper. I can ask my colleagues, contacts. So there are lots of options. So you list all the possible options. That is what happens here. And if it is about an area about which you have less expertise, you can get the advice of the experts of that particular area. Then the various options which are there, you select the best one. You evaluate each of them. What are the pros and cons of each option? What is the benefit of sending emails to all hospitals? What is the benefit of posting in Naukri.com and other websites? What are the cons of doing this? So pros and cons of each option you list. And after that, you select one option which has the maximum benefits and least cons. You select one option. When you implement that, it is not that it is over, it is not over there. Even after implementing, you have to keep monitoring also. And even when implementing, it is better, for it to be successful, it is better if you ask for assistance in those areas in which you do not have sufficient experience or expertise. You ask others for their assistance. You learn time management techniques so that you can devote sufficient time to solving this particular problem. And also you get organized over. I earlier told about scheduling the day. If you are an organized person, it will be easier to solve problems, whatever. So to implement whatever solutions you have found out for this particular problem. And after that, you keep on evaluating whether this solution is working or not. If the solution is not working, then from the list that you created earlier, you select another one. So that is how you do the problem solving. I told it in a very brief manner. You can check the internet. There will be lots of useful articles about how to use the problem solving techniques. And suppose you have to enter the quarantine. You can use most of the techniques that I already described to you, but this is one particular diary, 14-day well-being diary. It is available in that link I have mentioned before. So that gives you a schedule for all the 14 days. That's a very good one actually. You don't have to worry about that. It is a very good balance between most of the tips that we already discussed: eating, mindfulness, sleeping, exercise, playing, relationship, etc., etc. They will give you a very good outline of how to do things. So as a summary, we told about various techniques and tricks. So what you can do is you can think about your past. When in the last time when you faced the crisis, how you came out of it, what all strategies you used, what all techniques helped you. So you start using them. They are your strengths. That I cannot say, no other expert can say that, you know. So you give more importance to whichever strategy has helped for you in the past, whether it was social networks, whether it was your own strategy of problem solving, whether it was your ability to relax in the face of any adversity. Whatever, you use that to face the situation. Now, very briefly about depression. Stress, mild or moderate, and we can manage on our own, like using the techniques that we listed. If it has evolved to a syndromal depression, which is a psychiatric diagnosis, a disorder, it is better to seek professional help. Recently, we had some very unfortunate incidents. One celebrity allegedly committed suicide because of alleged depression. At least 2 residents committed suicide reportedly because of depression. So these things are happening. So one should be able to recognize depression in one's own and also in our own friends and family and colleagues. So in very brief, they are all mostly the symptoms of stress only, but they are more severe, more debilitating, so that they will start interfering with your daily life. You will not be able to perform your day-to-day duties in a proper manner if you are depressed. And also, the symptoms, what they have saying is, this is from the DSM-5. They have given 9 symptoms, out of which at least 5 should be present on most of the days for 2-week period. Low mood, anhedonia. What that means is diminished interest in activities. Like you used to enjoy watching TV, mixing with the friends, etc. Now you are not able to enjoy that. So out of these 2, 1 symptom should be there. Anhedonia or low mood has to be there. And out of the remaining 7, there has to be at least 4 symptoms: insomnia or hypersomnia, fatigue, weight gain or weight loss, psychomotor agitation or retardation, indecisiveness or poor concentration, feelings of worthlessness or feelings of guilt, recurrent thoughts of death or suicide, etc., etc. So if these kind of symptoms are there, especially if they are very severe, they are affecting your daily performance, they are long lasting, lasting at least 2 weeks, better seek psychiatrist help. Only then we can do a proper assessment and decide work competent. Don't shy away from doing that. And finally, about those of you who are in the role of supervisors, administrators, in charges, etc., etc., you have a lot more to do. Remember that this current situation is not going to go away anytime soon. It will be here at least for some months anyway. So plan accordingly. Don't focus on you have to be more proactive. It is not on a day-to-day basis you have a crisis that you solve that regardless of whatever happens to your staff. That is not the way. You should have a long-term plan for your staff, their capacity, their health. It is not that you think about today and tomorrow's duty. It is not like that. That doesn't work. Rotate workers from higher stress to lower stress functions. Some days you give them work in areas where there will be a lot of stress. After that, you shift them to areas where there will be less stress. That kind of rotation will help them mentally and physically. And about whatever is happening in your organization, you provide good quality communication and accurate information to all the staff. What are your plans? Are you going to be a COVID hospital? Do you have sufficient protective measures, etc., etc.? So that way, they will be less uncertain and they will feel more in control. So give them positive feedback. All of them are doing a hard work, doing a very good job. So let them know that. Give them a positive feedback so that their self-esteem, their morale is better, their burnout is less. Promote teamwork rather than people doing work alone and alone. Better have them working in teams. One good system is called a buddy system, where people are told to work in pairs, 2 people together, so that they can ensure each other's safety and also they can provide mutual support. Whenever there is a challenging situation, they can keep supporting each other. So once again, this is the link where these slides will be posted, mind.in/covid.pdf. By about 3 o'clock, I should be able to do that. You can get the slides from there. Thank you once again.